Colin, since Ms. Nichols wants to talk, take your time and have a conversation. You shouldn't argue in front of Sophie, Gwyneth said as she caressed Colin's cheek. Though her expression hinted at suppressed hurt, she maintained an air of understanding. Colin was obviously unwilling, but he ultimately nodded and stepped aside with Aspen. It had been so long since they had last been alone together that Aspen found herself unsure of how to begin. However, Colin clearly had little patience for her. He asked, "What is it that you want to say? You brought Sophie here to cause a scene. Are you even fit to be a mother?" His words cut deep, his disgust palpable. To him, Aspen had always been a woman willing to use any means to get what she wanted, even if it meant exploiting their own daughter. Aspen said flatly, "You promised to spend a month with Sophie. All I'm asking is that, during this time, you keep Miss Sanders away from her." Colin's eyes hardened. "I promised to spend time with Sophie. That's it. Don't expect anything else." His gaze grew icy as he added, "You're just as manipulative as ever. You clawed your way into my bed all those years ago. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even be a father." Aspen's chest tightened. She had heard those accusations before. No matter how many times she had tried to explain that night had been a terrible misunderstanding, Colin had never believed her. In his eyes, she had schemed her way into his life. For Aspen, Sophie had once seemed like a miracle, a gift. But now, as she thought about Sophie's fragile condition, all she could feel was sorrow. Sophie didn't belong to this cruel world. She had only come for a brief visit, and would soon leave. "Colin, does it bother you that much? So much that you can't even love your own child?" Aspen's voice was hoarse, strained with pain. She could endure his hatred for her, but she couldn't understand his coldness toward Sophie. It was just hard to believe that he couldn't see how precious and lovable she was. Colin snapped, "This child was never my choice. You forced this on me. You knew exactly what you were doing when you had her. You should have expected this." His words were filled with loathing. To him, being manipulated by Aspen had been an unforgivable offense, something he would never let go of. Suddenly, a small voice broke through the tension. "Mommy." Sophie's voice was trembling, and she was barely holding back her tears. Both Colin and Aspen turned in shock. Sophie stood a few feet away, tears streaming down her face. She had overheard everything. "Sophie," Aspen whispered, her heart twisting painfully. She rushed to Sophie's side as Colin's expression shifted with guilt. He hadn't meant for Sophie to hear those things. He hadn't been trying to hurt her, but the damage was already done. "Why you two should continue your conversation," Gwyneth stammered, putting on an anxious facade. Despite sitting in a wheelchair, she hurriedly reached out to guide Sophie away. "Sophie, let's not bother your mommy and daddy." However, Sophie didn't want to go anywhere with Gwyneth. She hated Gwyneth, and didn't want to spend another second with her. Sophie only wanted to be with Aspen. She had seen enough. She had clearly witnessed how Aspen had been hurt and cried. "Let me go," Sophie cried, squirming out of Gwyneth's grasp. "I want mommy." Gwyneth gasped in shock and swayed slightly. Then, she clutched her cheek in a dramatic gesture, as though she had been struck. "Sophie," Aspen shouted. "Gwen." Colin's voice rose in panic. In that moment, both Colin and Aspen rushed toward the people they each cared most about. Aspen held Sophie close, frowning slightly as she carefully checked her over. She asked, "Sophie, are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere?" Meanwhile, Colin examined Gwyneth's face, his brows furrowed. A small scratch from Sophie's nails had drawn a thin line of blood on Gwyneth's delicate cheek, though it was far from serious. Even so, that tiny bit of blood was enough to ignite Colin's anger. He strode forward, grabbed Sophie by the arm, and pulled her over to stand beside Gwyneth. He demanded coldly, "Apologize." Sophie's small frame trembled under his grasp. She bit her lip and glared at him, her eyes red with tears. "She brought me here on purpose. I didn't want to come. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted to be with mommy." "Colin, it's not her fault. It's mine," Gwyneth interjected softly, still holding her cheek. She tugged on his arm gently. "Don't be angry with her. She's just a child." Her calm plea only deepened Colin's frustration. Sophie's defiant expression mirrored Aspen's so closely that it made his blood boil. His jaw tightened as he stared down at the little girl in disdain. You really are just like your mother, vicious, even at such a young age. You're not allowed to say that about Mommy, Sophie shouted, her voice quivering with both fear and fury. She's the best person in the whole world. The tiny girl stood protectively in front of Aspen, her large, tear-filled eyes brimming with disappointment. Her small body trembled, and despite her fear, she didn't back down. She was determined to protect her mother, even if it terrified her. At that moment, something broke inside Sophie. She didn't want her father anymore. He didn't love her, and he didn't love Aspen. If that was the case, she didn't need him either. She had Aspen, and that was enough. Colin scoffed coldly and didn't spare her another glance. He turned and pushed Gwyneth's wheelchair away. Aspen hurried over to Sophie, kneeling to hug her tightly. I'm so sorry, Sophie. She felt like the worst mother in the world. Because of her choices, Sophie had had to endure pain and humiliation. Mommy, I know Daddy doesn't like me, Sophie whispered between sniffles. Even my name was picked at random. She continued. I used to wish he'd spend time with me, but now I know. He doesn't like you, and he doesn't like me either. Her voice cracked as she sobbed. Mommy, I don't want to leave you. You're going to be all alone. What will you do? Aspen's heart shattered at Sophie's words. Sophie clung to her desperately, her once bright eyes now filled with sorrow and fear. She didn't want to leave Aspen behind. However, before Aspen could respond, Sophie's small body began to convulse uncontrollably. Blood suddenly gushed from her mouth, staining Aspen's clothes as Sophie curled into a ball, writhing in pain. Sophie! Aspen screamed, her voice trembling with terror. Doctor! Help! Someone please save my child. Looking at Sophie, Aspen cried out desperately. Sophie, don't scare me like this. Stay with me.